Hello and welcome back to another episode of Auspol Explained. I'm your host, David, also known as Mr. Auspol by people who want to make me feel old. You think being referred to as Mr. would be normal as I'm encroaching on 30, but here we go! I'm still young at heart. Anyway, I'm here to explain to you an important part of the parliamentary system, the whip. Unlike the ceremonial mace and the black rod, which are both actual objects which could be used for physical violence, the whip is a person who unfortunately has only their bare hands to defend themselves if they get into combat. There are no whips involved, unless they buy one for themselves. Some of you may remember a photo shoot with George Christensen where he actually held a whip, because he was a party whip. I don't know if that was like from his personal collection, or if like the photographer was like, this is a fun prop. Anyway, let's get down to what do they do? The whip is an important person whose role helps politicians do their job and Parliament function smoothly. The whip is the member of a party that is in charge of party discipline. They're not the ones that tell unruly politicians who are making too much noise to go and sit in the corridor or time out. That is the role of the Speaker of the House. I have an episode about that, by the way, so go check that out afterwards. Not every party is big enough for a whip, but for the main four parties, the Liberals, Nationals, Labour, and the Greens, they all have a whip. They might even have multiple, a chief whip and two deputy whips. Whips are either elected by their party, like in Labour for example, or the leader of the party chooses a whip, like in the Liberal Party. It is a choice of that party as to whether or not they appoint a whip, a deputy whip, etc. So minor parties often don't find a use for them, especially if like your minor party is just you and your other friend. But as I'm about to explain, that can be super helpful for organizing things, especially for larger parties. The whips have a few duties, which include meeting with the whips of other parties to plan the parliamentary day. There can be multiple things that parties want to do in a sitting day, so the whips work out the agenda and the details. Organising who will speak on bills. In the federal parliament, the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives are in charge of the order of business. But they're not going to go around talking to every party being like, hey, who is talking today? What do you want to say? Have you got a nice rock for show and tell? They don't do that. That's information that the whips provide for them. Whips count the votes and record them. They also provide advice and support for their fellow party members. They work to make sure party decisions are carried out, which I'll expand on later in this episode. And they negotiate with other parties for a thing called a pear, which is not the fruit, tasty and delicious as it is. Whips, as far as I'm aware, do not take lunch orders. What is a pear besides the fruit? A pear is an agreement between two parties for when a member isn't present. So let's say a member of Labour is really sick because they got dared to eat some of the chewing gum stuck under the seats of Parliament. They were like, that'll be bad for me, and the other person was like, I double dog dare you, but look, anyway. So they can't be present, they're sick. Well, then they'd ask a member of the Liberal Party to pair with them, so that Liberal member also would not be present until the Labour member recovers and comes back. The Liberal member can be like, sweet, time to get really good at juggling, I'll take a day off. And then vice versa. When a Liberal member accidentally injures their leg doing a sick kickflip on a skateboard, a Labour member could be like, gnarly dude, but tough landing. Oh well, I'll sit out of Parliament for a day and catch up on rereading the greatest children's book series ever, Animorphs, while you get a cast and get better. You know, normal politician stuff. This means that there isn't a disadvantage and uneven numbers in Parliament because they've agreed to even it out. This isn't a binding agreement, it's not guaranteed, but it is a nice reciprocal thing that parties have agreed to do on occasion. It's the whip's duty to make sure their party members are present. Yes, politicians don't always sit in the chamber all day waiting for a vote to happen. Sometimes they'll be in their offices having a meeting, popping out to eat or just, I don't know, taking a break because someone's speech is like super boring and they just want to finish reading the latest Animorphs book without being caught. How will Jake and Tobias get out of this one? I don't know. You understand. That's still a relevant pop culture reference, right? Politics is a numbers game. Sometimes it can be very close as to whether or not a bill passes or not, and some bills and motions have passed simply because a member of a party who would have opposed it was not present to vote it down. Fun story time. Tony Abbott was once not present for a vote back in 2009 because he had passed out drunk on a couch. This is hopefully not normal. In his words, he drank quite a few bottles of wine. The impact was rather greater than it should have been. I think I famously slept through several divisions. He was not present for, a good amount of the day. It was the whip's duty to try and rouse him from his slumber, but were unable to move him. So if you think being a whip is just texting the group chat, hey, where you at? Then no. It's a little bit more important to that, and it can involve a lot of walking. And sometimes, apparently, it's trying to shake the future Prime Minister and be like, why won't you wake up? Fun fact, the position, like a lot of things, is one that we get from the British. The name comes from fox hunting. The whipper-in is the person in charge of whipping the hunting hounds into a pack so they could chase after a fox, which is just a grisly and messed up image. But just imagine a bunch of 50-year-old politicians stalking the halls of Parliament going, come on, get in line, yeah, get. I don't know, it's fun to me. Someone hundreds of years ago compared politicians to dogs and it stuck. People still compare politicians to dogs these days, but in a different way. The whip is aided in one super helpful way in that there are over 2,700 clocks in federal parliament. Not kidding, there are a lot. Not just that, they have flashing lights, green for the House of Representatives and red for the Senate. They all have the exact same time because they are all run by a central great master clock, which is a central clock that keeps everything in sync, not a terrible name for a B-grade superhero. It's me, Master Clock. I'm pretty sure there is actually a Batman villain from like the 60s that's just like, I'm Clock Man. I have clocks on me. There is also a bell that rings through loudspeakers throughout the entire building to be like, you have 4 minutes to get into the chamber. 4 minutes. Move. So, it's a big hint. There are, of course, whips in state parliaments as well, where there are significantly less clocks to help them with their jobs. Sad, I know. The whip positions themselves strategically in Parliament. The whip sits where they can see their whole party and are easily seen walking around talking to their party members, to other whips, or the parliamentary clerks, or president/speaker. Earlier, I mentioned party business, and if there's two things I love, it's parties and business, which is why I wear pointy cardboard hats to job interviews. Whips act as administrative officers to the party, which is really cool if you like organisational duties. I don't. They provide support for party meetings and consultations, and help with arranging party nominations for parliamentary committees. So as you can see, it's very thrilling. They also help with any party balloting that may be required. So if someone says, it's time for the ceremonial knifing of the Prime Minister, let the blood sport begin, the whip goes, all right, I've just returned from Officeworks and I've got my pen, I've got my paper, I've got my mysterious dark box, let the ritual begin. And then the whip puts on a black robe and starts chanting and nah, I'm kidding. Or am I? I've never actually been inside a party room during a leadership spill, so like, who knows what happens behind closed doors? Honestly, who does? Do you? Tell me. Fun fact, in the UK, where we get the position from, the Chief Whip is usually also the Parliamentary Secretary to the Treasury, which means that they're a member of Cabinet. In Australia, the Whip is not a Cabinet position. So, immediately forget that piece of information, it is of no use to you. This isn't UK Poll Explained, and if you ask me to explain how Brexit works, I will break down into tears. It is just too much. It's just too much. It's just too much. And there you have it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now you understand more about the role of the whip, how they help Parliament and parties organise themselves and run smoothly. Don't forget to share this with someone that you suspect might own a whip. And comment down what you would like to learn about next. Subscribe, all those kinds of things. You know what a call to action is. A quick special thank you to all my supporters on Patreon who help me pay rent. And once again, thank you so much for learning, and I will see you next time.